Well, I'm not up here tooting my horn when I say this. I'm just laying out the fact that we know what we're talking about. We have been predicting that you will start seeing massively increased attacks on police officers around the United States, but also in Europe and other areas. This is part of the globalist multinational program to undermine stability, national security, local security, as a pretext to force the political capitulation of the local constabulary to the globalist program. And Loretta Lynch at the Justice Department is pushing the Strong Cities Initiative in the last 6-7 months that federalizes and globalizes local police. Then they call off the dogs of Black Lives Matter and other groups. I think the best way to break down what's currently happening is this way. And I'm going to do it when we come back after the break in detail. But my personal journey dealing with the police, my personal journey trying to understand what's happening in the last 21 years on air, and of course before that. But it's this issue. Statistically, police killing people is one of the rarest forms of death. We see a lot of TV shows, a lot of movies that basically exacerbate and hype this up. I'm not defending police when they do bad things. That certainly goes on. But it is a manufactured red herring. When you see the #1 issue in this country for like 4 or 5 years, Trayvon Martin and then Black Lives Matter, you would think that the world was ending when 258 black Americans get killed by police every year, most of them justifiable shootings. There was a case in Houston last night where a man who was a felon and part of gangs and other things pulled a gun on police in front of witnesses, and the guy's wife talked to the news and said, yeah, he was just waving a gun around, pointing it at him, and they shot him. So 258 people that happen to be African descent are killed by the police. Okay, I'm sure some of the time it's wrong. If a cop's found to do it wrong, put him in prison. This isn't about an agenda of defending the police. I saw some comment on InfoWars because I put a video out that's gone viral titled this video will bring down Black Lives Matter. And I saw a couple commenters going, okay, what he says is a lot of good points, but, you know, he's got an agenda. Before I get into all this news today, we have a special guest joining us in the studio as well. Let me just say right now, I do have an agenda. And that's telling the truth, and that's having integrity, and that's actually trying to learn how this world works and trying to empower myself and others. Because I believe in humanity, and I believe in you. And I am too, I guess you could say, prideful to sit here and pick sides in something just because I think it'll further my own personal gain. Because when you have that attitude, you lose the whole storyline of life. I'm trying to empower everybody as long as it's not at my expense. And by my expense, as long as they're not trying to bring me down. Because when you empower others, it basically energizes the whole of the society. As John F. Kennedy said, a rising tide raises all ships. So separating Alex Jones from this narrative, InfoWars is getting 6 times the traffic Thursday night through right now we have ever had. Previous spikes were 3 to 4 times. We're seeing 6 times the traffic, 10,500 people a second are entering the site. That's how many new IP addresses are coming in a second. Millions of visitors an hour. Very, very exciting things are happening. Because people understand we've been predicting this. We understand what's going on. And I have a guest coming in that's really concerned with his sources and his research that they're going to try to kill Donald Trump as a false flag to cause a civil war. First, get the leftists all hyped up, hype up a bunch of cops killing people, get the media all pushing it, and then right as the summer goes towards its head, its climax, into September, an assassination of Donald Trump. We're going to talk about that with George Humphrey coming up today as well, and a lot more. But when we return, police are getting shot in Georgia, in Tennessee, in Florida, in Missouri, in New York, in San Antonio. The police department got shot up. I mean, this is serious. My friends, it is Sunday, the 10th day of July, 2016. I'm your host, Alex Jones. Longtime patriot, good friend of mine, former Austin City Council member, a fellow that was involved fighting the New World Order when I got involved in Pat Buchanan's campaign when I was still in high school. George Humphrey is going to be in studio with us coming up later in the hour. He's got a new book out. He, of course, is also a best-selling author. The book is Life, Love, Joy. Now, before we go any further, George is a high-powered businessman, real estate guy, has a lot of big connections to a lot of some of the older families in the United States. And I was just talking to him during the pre-show preparation about what insiders are telling him. And he says that they really are concerned about Donald Trump's life and that they're concerned that the establishment, that is criminal elements of it, want to start a civil war in this country, and that would be triggered by the assassination of Donald J. Trump. So we'll be talking about that with him and more coming up at the bottom of the hour. Where to start? I shot a lot of special reports Friday, Saturday, and today, and they're all viral. Some of them have millions of views. And then, of course, the radio show has had 6 times the traffic to Infowars.com. That is the biggest spike in traffic we've ever seen. It's been sustained since Friday right through today. We're getting millions of visitors, new visitors, by the way, most of them, every hour. It's epic. I know Drudge Report was crashing on Friday. That gets billions of visitors a month, much larger than Infowars. And, you know, we saw it crash. Infowars has also crashed some. We also have the backup site, prisonplanet.com. And it's because folks know that we have been documenting the war on police. We have been documenting the mainstream media, Hollywood, broadcast TV, but also fiction media in almost every venue, pushing and making it very sexy and very risque and very avant-garde that police are criminals and police are the worst people in the world and police need to die. Now, before I get into all the latest developments and cops getting shot all over the country since Friday and attacked, including just south of us in San Antonio a few hours ago, the police department being shot up, I want to explain something. I am uniquely qualified to speak to what's happening because I saw the threat to our republic by globalization, militarization of our police. I made films about it 20 years ago. I wrote books about it 10 years ago. But I was never anti-cop. I was anti-federal globalist training to turn them into political officers that would oppress speech, to turn them into anti-gun forces, to teach them instinctive shooting training that might save their lives sometimes but kills a lot of innocent people. I was against the type of stuff we saw the feds do at Ruby Ridge and Waco. But even then, I wasn't against the feds. I was against globalist crime groups, infiltration cells that had taken over areas of the federal government. I want to take our country back. So because our police are being more and more federalized and our military is being globalized and we're going under international control and a lot of un-American anti-free speech, anti-liberty things are happening, I've been trying to raise the alarm. And then the media would say, well, you're just against the military, you're just against the police. But then I found the last decade the police and military, on average, were more sophisticated than I was because they were on the inside, that they were being taken over and basically scapegoated. And I found that for groups that are awake, the military is the most awake to the globalist New World Order program. The police are about the second most awake group out there. Doesn't mean they're perfect. Doesn't mean they have big problems. Doesn't mean some departments are totally criminal. That's human nature, absolutely. It isn't just some bad apples. Sometimes you've got whole barrels that are bad, and sometimes whole barrels that are good. I've almost found in my research it's like there's no bad apples or they're all bad apples. It kind of works like that in life and in history. Most people probably recognize that. A restaurant's either totally horrible and out of control and you get sick when you eat there, or everything's good on the menu. But separate from that, our country is being taken over by multinational systems that are establishing a form of planetary government called globalism. And I've been fighting for 20-plus years just to expose the fact that that was happening. Now, most Americans know the Federal Reserve is foreign-owned and private and part of globalism. Most Americans want it audited or abolished. Most Americans know that the British exit, the Brexit, was about getting out of the unelected EU. The liberty movement worldwide, the nationalist movement, the movement for prosperity and common sense, led by people like Ron Paul and Matt Drudge and Nigel Farage and people like you, And Joseph Farah, and it's not about giving credit here, folks. It's just we need to understand the people that were there first, fighting hardest, to show their success, to say, look what you can do when you get involved and fight back as well in the information war. And my job has been to just galvanize as many people as I can, pointing out what was coming so that as the wages of world government came home to roost, people would be ready to stand up and say no to the next phase. Because if you think stuff's bad right now, none of us have seen anything yet. But I read countless university-published books about policing, and I studied militarization, and I studied Pentagon programs shipping weapons in, and I studied the curriculum and what was going on, and I got secret documents that we broke nationally over and over again where the police were training to take on gun owners and veterans and confiscate firearms. But the police themselves were being given this curricula. They didn't want to follow it. They were leaking it to us. So what I'm saying is, if you don't like the TSA groping your genitals and putting you through a naked body scanner while the border's wide open, I totally agree with you. It's a fraud to train us to be slaves. But let's not blame the TSA person themselves. Let's blame ourselves for letting it happen and Congress that did it. And then after we've gotten our house in order, then we can talk about the TSA people. And Lord knows there's some pedophiles want that job. There's some criminals that rob your bags. There's some bad people in there. But the essence of free will and the essence of a free society and the essence of a good society is we go after people for what they individually did, not what happens in groups. If cops in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and in Minneapolis, Minnesota last week questionably shoot armed black males during wrestling matches, I don't know if the cops are guilty or not. It's not clear. Let's say they are. Do you then go shoot 15 cops and kill 5 of them in Dallas? Do you go shoot people on the highway in Georgia and Tennessee and kill a cop and shoot up some cars and shoot up some cars in Florida and shoot up the police station in San Antonio? There's so many of these coming in right now, I can't even keep track of them. There's just cops getting shot all over the place right now. And as I studied this more and more years ago, I realized, oh my gosh, I've been trying to reform the police. And what I've done partially is help wake them up faster to the larger globalist program. So I wasn't a complete failure. And of course, they weren't waking up just because of me, but because of what they were being taught. You know, the founding fathers are bad. Christians are your enemy. Veterans are all going to start attacking you. There's going to be a civil war. And we're like, yeah, because the globalists are setting one up. That's how they're going to conquer America. But then it all clicked. Oh, government that has a 9% approval rating in Gallup and a 6% approval rating for the media in Gallup and AP, they want to basically scapegoat the police and have a civil war that is only about trying to overthrow the police when they're the lowest level of government, so that none of the real revolution ever goes against the globalists that have actually come in and hijacked the country. Because it's not a revolution, it's a restoration. And so if we have a false revolution just based on killing cops, that discredits any legitimate resistance in the future. And then you understand the larger plan and exactly what we're facing and what we're dealing with. Folks, when you've got Facebook and Google and Apple and Twitter all saying Black Lives Matter and censoring folks that expose it, and Hillary Clinton saying, well, it's white people's fault this happened, and all the Dallas mayor saying that, and acting like, well, police must reform, like Obama said, like, that is an attempt to make this 10 times worse. This is an attempt to overthrow the country. All right, so there's a million different angles to this, but I want to go into some clips here and break down what's currently happening and get into all the other attacks on police that are currently taking place. Multinational corporations, to a great extent, have already captured this country. They want to have Americans at each other's throats, so they have weaponized media, CNN, MSNBC, you name it, local TV stations across the country come out and say, oh my gosh, it is the #1 issue in America. The police are hunting down and just executing black men everywhere. This year so far, 2,000 plus people have been shot in Chicago, 90+% by black on black. 500 plus blacks die a year in Chicago at the hands of other blacks with guns. You can look it up for yourself. I did whole reports on Friday. They're on Infowars.com showing the FBI's own numbers. You tell a Black Lives Matter person that or some other social justice warrior,